All right. So first of all, thank you for being here this afternoon. I had a very delightful lunch, a very long chat with Rosalie and Paul, and somehow the center, the types of people, the cross-disciplinary approach, the focus on China and Asia Pacific region, they all sound so right to me. I feel like today I'm more home than I was yesterday, partly because yesterday Winnipeg was really, really cold. And it was a time of the year I disconnect myself from Winnipeg because it's too cold. And also because we don't have a center like this. And what's interesting is I teach brand management for a long time. And a lot of great brands in Winnipeg. We have Mondada, which is doing extremely well in the United States, high-end sportwear market. We have a lot of the jeans and fashion brands coming from Winnipeg. They do elsewhere. They do very well elsewhere. They're not truly appreciated or even known within Winnipeg. So in many ways, I am that kind of brand because at this stage of our life, the research we do, we call the research. Actually, it's me search. So it is everything about me, who we are as researcher. What is our identity, and that value, that identity, largely determine what we do, what kind of research we do. So talking about China, researching China is not a coincidence at all. It's a journey. It's meant to be because I myself am a Chinese and I live in overseas for more than 18 years. And I think starting from 2003, I went back to China every summer together with my little one. And when he was a baby, so he came back from China speaking fluent Chinese. But via this past 9 years, we see so much rapid change in China. And so I think what's really fascinating is this both the insider and outsider. You constantly immerse in and you look at things that you were not able to see if you were insider. And then come back to Canada, you start seeing something about Canada that you were not able to see while you constantly in Canada. So this mental transportation, I think is very powerful. It really opens up all your senses and all the channels of your knowledge so that you start really making a lot of sense. So I think the talk here, I don't mean to be very kind of authoritative in any way. I think it's a great opportunity to actually start a journey of sharing. The knowledge is in a very informal kind of form. It's about storytelling. So my goal today is actually to tell some stories, and these stories are based on our direct experience and interviews with the companies that are top companies in China, which some of you may not know if you're living in North America because you really don't have the channel to truly understand the power of these brands in China. But at the same time, at the very end of my talk, which may not be part of the book because I have a different book about this perspective, I call it the brand system theory, so which is really about Western brands, global brands, and the knowledge from that, trying to use that framework and see, so what are the Chinese company doing? So at the very end, we have a little bit of contrastive, a little bit comparative approach. And I would like to then end with the Q&A. And I'm so impressed by Dr. Wang, who can speak a perfect Chinese. So if all my Western audience can speak Chinese, we can do Q&A in Chinese as well. I hope, and I'll be truly making it so different. With this, I say volcano is obviously upgrade of a storm, and that's really what my conclusion at the very end, talking about the cumulative power of the burst of these groups. I want to introduce my co-authors. You can see we talk about power. You can see these two men filled with power. One is Professor Amitabh Chattopadhyay from INSEAD, a very well-known school in France. He's a chair professor of marketing. The other one is Dongsheng Zhou. He was a former graduate from UBC. He's associate dean and professor of marketing at CIPS, which is China's Harvard. And these two colleagues and me, we have been working together for almost 2 years. And I think, and we work together very well as a team. And not to say that I co-branded myself with them, not only because they're more acknowledged in their field, but also I think they're also lucky because I'm the labor in many ways. So they said, oh, great Fang, our project is stuck because we're so busy traveling. And finally, you're going to UBC, you're going to Simon Fraser. Sorry, I was in UBC last month. So you're going to be in Simon Fraser. We should thank Simon Fraser for giving you the opportunity so that I can give a good push to our project. And after today's talk, And I'm going to New York next month, and our book writing will be so much fluent in terms of the progress. So I think I want to thank you as well for this opportunity. So I think, with a DNA fast, I want you to remember these words, because these words will come back. The fast, ambitious, diligent, a little bit rushed, maybe. Maybe I may not be doing a good job, may not be accountable. I cannot control the outcome. And this is analogous to the story I'm going to tell as well. But this is really my confession, if anything. I feel like I have this urge, the passion to share. And I love this, the welcome feeling of the center. But try to take it easy on me if there is something that is not too formalized. I would like to talk about a few things, and also I will monitor time, because I really would like to have a lot of meaningful discussion, dialogue. But one thing that we start this is when we discuss this project with all the field research in China, one metaphor, one visual image that is coming very strongly throughout the process is a spinning wheel. It's a wheel keeps spinning. It just is so fast. When you see a wheel that is spinning that fast, it makes you dizzy. Makes you just like, you don't have time to think. You have to be on the go all the time. And this is really the very powerful kind of mental image that enters us all the time whenever we go back to China and do this research, and including my own visit as well. I guess this spinning wheel is defined by a mentality or a practice or a norm of 24/7. So basically in China, it doesn't matter what job you are in. Basically, everybody's accessible 24/7. Their phone never turn off. This is norm. And the tax, and a lot of times you cannot imagine our interviews with the senior management, SVP, CEO, president. They're very busy. All the interviews are on the weekends, Sunday and Saturday, dinner. And amazes me, because I know that in Western world, in North America, it's just simply not doable. And the weekend is family time. It's not supposed to be. So and so this is really the intuition of this 24/7, this whole concept. And also when you look at the construction workers, you go to BYD, go to this factory, go to the company, weekend, always a lot of people. You don't feel it's like a weekend. So there's no sense of that break. There's no sense of break. It's a continuous on the go. So this is really why this whole analogy. And then we try to unpack and say decode this mentality, why, what is going on via the interviews, not only with senior executives, with the people, but also with the common people in China, that they're talking about this spinning wheel because there was an urge, and based on two things. Number one is we're being lagging behind. There are so many years, China is going through disruptions and changes, and this time that we have economic prosperity, and we need to really leverage, we need to really catch up, and there's so much to learn. And that's really one thing about the catching up mentality. On the other hand, there's also a strong sense of, if I don't work fast and work hard enough, I may miss my train. So this is another analogy, is that I'm missing the midnight train. And in Hong Kong, New York, if you miss your, MTR, the last ride, you're stuck. You're going nowhere. You're going to be stuck in the station. So this catching that midnight train, that mentality for fear of losing the future opportunity. So these two very powerful forces are interacting to give us the symptoms, the superficial symptoms of you feel it's like it's a spinning wheel. And give you a few examples of this is not my own work, and then I'm very lucky to find some data. It's not perfect. You can see that the Chinese data is 2004, the US data, USA is 1991, East Germany is 2006, and actually this probably would explain why there is an urge. And so you ask, these are the survey respondents from each country, and theoretically they should be representative sampling. You ask them, do you think your family income will be higher in the next 5 years? You can see the Chinese, more than 60%, are very optimistic, and more than the rest of the countries, and except the USA. I think if you do the survey today, the answer would be no. So it's a different era. And then you look at that so hard work, if you work really hard, it's going to be rewarding, bring you something. And you can see that this optimism, this kind of sense of, catch up the train and do something, catch up, it's going to do good. So this is another thing. And also, the number of rich people will rise. So, the chance that I'll get rich is possible. You can see the overwhelming optimistic, again, compared to either Japan or, so this is a very indirect, because in China, it's very hard to get this survey data. And I feel that this is a professor from Stanford, the data published a while ago. Actually, when they tried to do this kind of work, they were expecting very negative results. They were like, the materialism and money focus, why are people doing that? So they're very counterintuitive that they find that this sense of optimism and also, of course, empowered by a sense of material gain is definitely very strong in their data. And also, there was some other research talking about, because I'm amazed, I teach a lot of executive programs, I dialogue with some mayors of the city and the CEOs of some companies, and my sense is my students are very busy. They don't have weekend. And I asked the CEOs and presidents of these companies, I said, what do you do with all this time? Are you engaged in the operation of your company? And they're saying that, don't laugh, we're just PR guys. We're very busy. All our social time is actually burned with dealing with government officials and having friendship and communicating with them, getting them to understand what we're doing. So it's very important. And then my question would be, is that unique? So and we go back to some literature, and this is a work that I published about the Chinese CEOs. And the data of that book is really talking about these multinational corporations such as Unilever, P&G, GE, and their CEO in China. What they find is, yes, this is very unique, because most of my time and I need to spend in building relationship with government, and this is very important. This is not something I would do in other countries, especially in North America. And so one of this person, the CEO of the Standard, I believe this one is, I don't have the quote. Yeah, the Batman, it's a financial company talking about spend more than 30 to 40% of the time. And most importantly, said the CEO is the legal representative. So officials need to look to them in every aspect of business. They hold you accountable. If you send someone else, your manager, someone below you, you're not sending the signal of respect. The government really wants you to take it really seriously, that you keep communicating with us. So this is really one an example. This is Steve Schneider from GE. He's talking about, I spend roughly 65% of my time. Think about North America. It's just unthinkable. They would do a lot of internal affairs, internal operation, making strategic decisions, meeting with important clients, but not with this extent of time that we would spend on the government communication. I'm spending a lot of my time with either customers or government agencies, and you have to. So this is a confirmation of what we were puzzled about, this focus of this politics and political communication and a business. This is another example. Basically, I think is reinforcing my point earlier, and this is really talking about this person even spent even more time and talking about sometimes this is not just one government, it's 100 governments. So you have to understand in China, just like in Canada, we have the federal government at a country level, and we have the provincial government at a provincial level. And sometimes the provincial policy has a lot of their idiosyncrasies. So you really need to respect the regional, provincial policies as well. That's why you're dealing with multiple government. Every county, has their layer. So it's very complex. And so what they're saying is, you really need to make sure all the potential stakeholders are well informed about your intentions. Make them feel you're respected, and then they're respected. They will help your process a lot. And so that you understand that when the misperception of multinational corporations, like we have the marketing scale, we have the brand management scale, we have money, we do consumer research, we're so much better than a lot of local firms. But at the same time, this data precisely telling us as an outsider, it's not easy either. You have to really break into the legitimacy. You have to communicate with the government so that make them understand your good intention so that your business processes are guaranteed with certain level of smoothness. And this is interesting that I give my own tell. This is the CEOs from the North American companies or global brands, but these are the CEOs of the Chinese firms. And this is interesting that this is two of, actually, I cannot reveal their name, but very dominating players in their own region. And one of them was my student, and he said, he called him brother. This brother is actually the #1 guy in Heilongjiang province. And he said, we have so many meetings, and we're brothers. We go to massage together, food reflexology, right? The foot massage. We talk about so many personal things. He would tell me stuff that he would not even tell the family. And when he has some great, some people do hunting, get some very rare products and produce, the first thing he would think about is me. So it's more than just a transactional relationship. I have to take care of him. When I do business, I have to think about his policy constraints so that I'm not getting him into trouble. Not only because, he's helping me, because he is my brother. We take care of each other. So this kind of bonding is way beyond the transactional kind of realm. It's really at a very personal level. And there's another tale. This is another very huge real estate company, the CEO. He's flying to the third-tier city called Baihe, which is the border city I believe it's in Jilin or Heilongjiang. It's close to Russia. I don't remember the province, but the city, he would travel every week, and his family is in Shanghai, so every week. So he showed me all his boarding passes, and I said, don't you get tired? And this is modern time, a lot of emails. You have a team there. Why can't you delegate this kind of things to them? He said, Professor Wan, you don't understand. There is a change of the leadership of the city, and all the agreement we had, all the land we're supposed to have and development is supposed to happen, are now have this, we're stuck. And this new leadership, we have to communicate constantly. So this is really the spinning wheel that using a very anecdotal data in a way that reinforce these kind of intuitive observation really strike us. That's why it's very exhausting and depleting if you are so spoiled by the North American lifestyle. You go back to China, you're not supposed to stop. And if you're used to this pace, you are extremely exhausted. And so that's why, and then we look at a deeper level, we say, why? And it's not surprising to see that because the whole social structure, the constraint, the structure is going through huge modification or revision, and its journey is still uncertain. So that's really what happened is when you look at the Mao era, it's a rigid bureaucratic socialism, planned economy. The government is really like your parenting, just like tell you everything. There is no sense of real market economy. So everything, so the whole idea of consumerism brands, they're exotic, they're non-existing. And then you have Deng Xiaoping, the Deng era, and especially with 1992 open door policy. I mean, a lot of you, I don't know, in your 30s or 20 years, and now it's 2012. You think about within 20 years, how fast you have to change, reinvent yourself, and transform in order to be where you are. And along the way, how much uncertainty, how much of the catch up, how much of the throwing the good with the bad, and how much of that is all happening just within simple 20 years. This 20 years is nothing when you think about the even more threatening action, which is joining the WTO, which means you basically, you can say, I play my own game of market economy with my Chinese characteristic, but this WTO, you basically open your yard, open your door, and say, I let you come. If you're going to swallow my local firms, I have to let you. This is a tremendous commitment. It was a gamble. And if you look at the literature, Zhu Rongji was having a really hard time later because everybody is scared of what would happen, because it is really, you don't have the software, you even don't have the hardware. You invite all these people come, hoping it will redefine the market, make everything better. But how are you not sure that they're turning you into an economic colony? And this is really a huge debate and huge experiment at a tremendous level that we can ever witness. And this 20-year kind of consumer society at a very early stage had gone through so much, and that's why our conclusion is actually in many ways the Communist Party is a chief. It's a CEO, it's a chief architect, and they're helping to build the society with all the new policies, the new social structure, so that they can achieve economic goals. So that's why they said what's unique about Chinese society, Chinese Communist Party, is a party that is highly centralized, very efficient in terms of their structure, because it doesn't matter how many layers you have, they still can manage to send a signal to the most remote part of the party branch and make it execute like no time. This kind of muscle of execution is just very amazing. Of course, everything has its a duality, but in this regard, and they're not doing that to focus on other stuff. Their primary focus is economy. And that's why it's easy to explain why such a strong execution with economic focus can explain so much economic growth. It's because they truly focus on that. And also they have to address the social needs. And as we go through the rapid changes, not only the policies, but also economy, the business models, the vocabulary, the social values, everything along the way. That's why China, and you study Lao, you study Confucianism, it's an old civilization. But as a consumer society, we're in our teens, we are in our early 20s. And that's why a lot of knowledge and very hard to integrate, because there's so much change and so much going on that is very hard to decipher, and that's why it's difficult to integrate back with the past. And that's something beyond this project. But I love this quote from Deng Xiaoping. Actually, the meaning is 致富光荣. It means that getting rich is glorious, or getting rich is proud. It's something you should be proud of. And this is, people would accuse, talking about this would really hyping up the very high level of materialism. But this is because of these philosophy, these kind of underlying mindset that propels the development and the growth of the Chinese companies. And this is also something that I discussed earlier, is this is another example of showing you how the government is a central agent of economic growth. So that's why I have a lot of friends who are also the government officials. They're members, senior members of Chinese Communist Party at a provincial level. And they're saying, Professor Wan, we're putting ourselves in two roles at the same time. And on one hand, we are the leadership. We need to study the party ideology. We need to understand what it means by being the Communist Party. What is our role to our citizen? And that's why we have to go back to, they have a lot of training camps to understand what is our value, how do we revigorate, refresh ourselves to keep up with the need society. On the other hand, we are the CEOs as well, because we have to help boost the economic growth regionally. And my political capital, my political performance is almost 100% tied to my economic performance with my region, my city, my county. How do I draw investment? How do I make people's income higher? And we don't have enough time to learn both knowledge. And sometimes the two roles will conflict. But we have no way, nobody's telling us what is the right way to do. It's really muddling through the water. We try to figure out, just so because it's so new, it's so uncertain. So that's why there's another example of showing you that these kind of rhetoric you can see all the time from the media, the local governments, and at provincial level, even the central government always say, this is our goal, our GPA will be this. You know, this year investment of foreign, the FDI, foreign direct investment should hit this level. And so this economic focus. And I'm going through this because this is a chapter that actually we thought a lot about it and really had a tough time how to put them together. I don't know whether I'm doing a good job. This is another example of showing you another, what I'm trying to tell you maybe something very intuitive, but I just want to share with you how we try to get some evidence to support this intuitive knowledge. And this is an example of all these front-end billionaires and millionaires, and one of them we know the Husky, Li Ka-cheng, you know, with the Husky, the oil station, right? The energy sector and all these people. And so this is very controversial as well. is New York Times. If you read the New York Times, it's about our dear premium Wen Jiabao, and the New York Times, very powerful, because if you go to the English New York Times, they gives you a Chinese translation, and this is very unusual, but you can really read the whole Chinese thing. But what I'm trying to show you is actually we're talking about in China this intricate tie, unbroken tie between business and politics. So here is this front end business, but look at how intricate and all these relationship is actually ingrained into the families. And he may not know. People say, he may not even know about it. It's beyond his reach and knowledge. He may not even want to know. It's out of control. And all these families have so many intermediary to navigate and use political influence, and then going through this business transaction. So this is another thing about the nature of how business and politics are so intertwined. I'll make the point why this is unique, why it's important to us later on. And I love this guy. His name is Wang Zhigang. He is consultant. And my dream is one day I'll quit my job and be like a female version of Wang Zhigang, because what I love about what he's doing is he do a lot of branding for cities and provinces, and he's a consultant. And he wrote something, you talk about the poetry and ancient Chinese. He's using modern Chinese to illustrate very simple ideas that he observed. And he said, in China, in order to be a businessman or entrepreneurial, you have to first understand the politics, and then you understand the society. You know a little bit about operation, and then a little bit about business. So knowing business and operation obviously are not primary compared to understanding the politics and societal needs and trends, and these are much more important. I love this quote. And also he talked about this dilemma, this constant struggle and the constant competition between politics and economy. He said in China, politics and business are like twin brothers, and they're contesting each other all the time. And successful entrepreneurs are the ones who strike the fine balance on walking on the wire between the politics and the business. And if you're not good at operating business, you're not going to be successful. But if you're too good at a political maneuver, you're going to get into trouble as well. So see how we can. So that's why I think the successful entrepreneurs in China have a great EQ, the emotional intelligence, way more than normal people. That's really my hypothesis. Maybe when I don't have a graphic designer, but I tried myself. I said, I don't have time. Last night, what I'm drawing, it looks like a fox, but actually what I was trying to do is turtle and air, kind of the analogy. So what actually, I have my favorite, he's an economist, he's a finance professor, Liang Xianping from Wharton School of Business, later went to China. He becomes a media tycoon in many ways. He wrote many books, and he's writing about, so I read some of his work, which is really kind of coinciding with our perception of this, we call the drug effect. So what is a drug effect? Which is, explosive return. And it gives you 500 to 1,000 to 10 times, 20 times. Within very short period of time, you can get that return only if you align your business with a policy. Because the government has economic focus. They have priority. They want to develop the road. They want to develop the school. They want to develop the hospital. Whatever they want to develop, that the policy train, if you, number one, has a connection that you can jump onto it, number two, if you're fast enough, and that gives you explosive return, and it looks like a hare. Remember the hare really ran really fast, right? So that is really the analogy there. But the problem there, that's why I love my Chinese student, is that Professor Wan is like a woman or a guy with high heel. So there is a guy with high heel. Because when you have high heel, why I'm wearing heels? It makes me instantly taller. I don't need to eat a lot, and I don't need to change myself, and I don't need to force myself to eat all the veggie and protein, because, I'm not going to change. But high heel will make me immediately having more power and much higher, taller, compared to the flat heel, right? So we're talking about two groups of people and two kinds of economy. One kind, people would say it's like a bubble economy. It's explosive return, and the money is really fast. You do take some risk, but at the same time, you have the political connection as well. Some of them are state-owned enterprise, whatever. It's a privileged group. But here's the trouble. This kind of practice, a kind of a norm, create a very bad vibe in the way that your expectation is twisted, which means easy, quick money is a norm. Who would want to develop business all through their life? And that's why people ask me, why are you still in Winnipeg? And I said two answers. Number one, I love my son's school, which is SJR, one of the best in Canada, and love that school. Number two, I love people, the business. And you cannot imagine, there are a lot of family business in the business for more than 60 years. Okay, and one of the stories called a BDI, Bridge Drive Ice Cream, BDI. If you come to Winnipeg, you let me know, I'll buy you an ice cream. Not now, in summer. And you can see virtually the whole street is lining up. It's like a Jen Berry in the United States. Why? Because it's communal. Why? Because the owner, its livelihood is the life of his. And it's so cheap and affordable. I said, I can help you, brand it, sell it in superstores, make it big. He said, I'm not interested because I just want to stay small. So going back to the point of this whole solid manufacturing, IT service industry, we call the solid economy, these enterprises are really, really actually difficult, not because that people don't need it. It's a lot of talented people, people with connection, people with resources are not interested. They're interested in this. Therefore, this going back to the point of why we keep talking about it, the political and the business tie would greatly encourage this kind of bubble economy, and a lot of times the entrepreneurs with ambition, with the passion are often crushed because it's a really low returning thing to do, and it takes years. That's why it's a turtle, right? And until I think the time is right for them, globalization. So to recap, is actually the spinning wheel. From government side, it's all making a lot of sense because it makes them keep revising, change policy, make them very adaptive, gives them high growth, give them speed so that the society is transformational. Even the third-tier city, 9 years ago, my hometown, there are many places, I cannot recognize. The whole city has a facelift. I get lost even though I grew up there. So it's a huge change. It's very goal-driven, no doubt about it, because you can really establish yourself with all the economic status. And that's why China has such a power in a lot of international negotiation because of the economic status. And lastly, they have to change and adjust. These are all, I think, working really well for government. However, there is a side effect that we really consider because these companies, these businesses are not just competing in China. They are striving for a global space, and they have to play global game. And we're going to go back to the global game in a minute. But these global game, this kind of ambition to go there, make these particularly troublesome. For example, I call the drug effect of policy train. And the reason I use drug because I have a very close relative, and actually he is a drug addict. He's a very decent man, and he is very lovely, but he cannot get out of it. And I asked him, I said, why? We have rationality, when you look at how destructive it is, why? And he said, sister, you just don't understand. There is something about this I have to tell you. When you're on drugs, your arousal, your emotional arousal, it's like on the ceiling constantly. And when you're not on drugs, even the normal excitement and happiness becomes so low, the intensity is so low, you feel like you're living death because your drugs are training your brain to receive such a high explosive kind of a stimuli, so strong that the normal happiness becomes so tasteless and so bland. In many ways, the explosive growth of that is really twisting the expectation, and I think that sends a very bad norm and signal to the business. And also, not only that, you're on the constant go, and we do know that sometimes you make a mistake, but you reflect, you pause, you learn, and you readjust. Here is no time for reflection, and there is no vision. One thing that very funny that all the CEOs at the very end, we ask them question, what is your brand DNA? What is your value? What is your culture? This is one thing that they cannot answer really well, because at the very end, the honest ones are telling us, to be honest with you, we don't have time to think about it. Okay? We're constantly functioning at a very reactive and on-the-go kind of, impressive record, and we have to keep up, and we don't have time to reflect. And lastly is when you try to be so reactive, the problem is these policies can be a shield, but when you go to international market, there is no such policy anymore. You don't have the high heel anymore. You have to take off your shoes and you're flat. So where is your source of competitiveness? Where is your sense of sustainability? And this can be a huge problem. And lastly is the sense of insecurity. Think about yourself, and that's why I love, Rosalie, I love your field, organization behavior, organization psychology. I'm learning so much about it. Is when the organization, one entity, social mechanism is lacking security, it actually gives you very short-term oriented behaviors. They cannot think about the future. If you feel insecure now, you don't think about 10 years down the road. You just think about the now. That's really why the sustainability is such a big issue now in that business environment. I am a very bad speaker in the way that I'm a bad teacher. I always have a longer class. My students all suffer, so I always steal 5 minutes. But I think I want to share this with you because maybe this is more intuitive to a lot of people. This is not intuitive. We look at a lot of literature. We are not happy with the lack of the details and the causal kind of explanation. And this is really the sense-making we made collectively, 3 of us, and I think it's very helpful. It's a lot of meals and dinners in Beijing, and this is really something. So, so using the Western perspective, this kind of environment is not inducive. To a certain extent, is even adverse to the business and brand building. But the reality is, I want to show you some initial success of Chinese brands. For some of you, if you're not familiar with Chinese brands, you may encounter them for the first time. For some of you, you know it's a household name in China. This one is called Baidu. And it's a little pause. So Baidu, using the ancient Chinese poem, Baidu means you search for so many times, you cannot find it, and finally you find it. So Baidu means 100 of times. So this is really the search engine name in China, who is a rival of Google, and huge rival. And then this is the Baidu's Beijing campus. We did a lot of interviews there, and the other thing, talking about the speed, is all the senior management team, a lot of these companies that I discussed, they're the top tier, the first tier Chinese companies with global footprint. Their CEOs are all, their senior management all below 40. The R&D, the chief R&D officer of this company, Mr. Lee is only 29, and he has all white hair. I thought it was fad. He dyed hair like I do. He said it's just stress. He has no time to sleep, and this guy is a very talented 29-year-old. And this is Baidu's campus, going to be in Shenzhen, almost like a 20,000 square meter. And Shenzhen is becoming the Silicon Valley of USA, and in a way that it's making a lot of sense because Baidu is doing so many things that is going to the high tech, and Shenzhen just have the right network, all the talents. It's a cluster, so it's very easy to navigate through. I want to show you a few things which is very counterintuitive. This is about the green line is Baidu, and you can see the spike is simply because this is the enemy, the competitor, Google, Google China. The reason that they're shooting up, this is 2009 data. Right now, their market share is 83.5%, though they're the monopoly almost, is with a very interesting twist and drama, is actually Google exited from Chinese market. And in my class with my student, we discuss a lot about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, why it's so risky. But one thing about, we're going to go back to Google later, is that the Western companies actually are very simple-minded, is that it's bending their value. You don't want to sell your soul in order to make money. That's a value they don't want to bend. So there are a lot of times that this whole information control is getting to their nerve. They try to negotiate with the government, and not only say Baidu is very competitive, sometimes destructive as well. Baidu is doing some very adverse, bad behaviors as well. So Google just had enough of it. So exited from the market 2010 officially, but starting 2006 and to 8. So you can see the huge spike. But Baidu is only 15 years years old, okay? So you think about the company was founded in 1999. You have to remember, this is like a miracle. Within such a short period of time, look at what they have achieved. So I'll show you more data here. Hold on. Yeah, this is in millions of renminbi. So this is 2000. This is their second year, right? It's 1.3 million renminbi. So divided by 7, which is US dollars, right? So within how many years? 2011. This is a company almost like almost 8 billion US dollar company. How can this be? And think about it. This is not the company with high heels, by the way. This is a company with a flat shoe that Robin Lee from USA, returned to China. And he founded this company. Of course, he's a very good friend with the government, and he does have a lot of good support as well. And also, this is Baidu. You just you look at Google, the changes of the web pages. You just don't see many changes, but every year they're adjusting. This is Baidu's website. This is 2002, very cluttered, and then 2007, it's more like a very clean cut, whatever. They keep having new products, and here's a poster bar. They have a news. They have I Know, Baidu Know, so it's almost like a Wikipedia sort of. They give you everything. And one thing that's very unique that Google doesn't want to play with them is actually can search images and music and movie and all the different entertainment as well. So they differentiate themselves from Google in many ways. And they acquired HAL 123, so you can see all these changes. I'll go through briefly. So when you see this one, this is 2012. They have music. Baidu knows. Now they have e-commerce site. It's called a 有啊 means I have it. So whatever you want to buy, I have it. So the Chinese thing. And now you have hi la, hi. Hi is an English word, means social media. So you can do Facebook, you can do like a Skype, like the FaceTime. And so they are so this is their company strategy. Within a very short period of time, they're saying, we're a search engine, we provide search engine. Now it's about a search engine and related operation. Now we're a new media company. And one thing amazing of Baidu, which this is about the market share I discussed earlier. You can see the differences here, and this is 2006, 2005. You can see it's really jumping. This is really funny. How did Baidu beat up Google? Because Baidu said, Baidu knows Chinese. Google doesn't know Chinese. Only a small section of Chinese people who understand English, who are overseas educated, who are the executives, expatriates, they use Google. But majority of the Chinese, they would use Baidu because Baidu is doing such a aggressive campaign all over China, mocking at the Guilao. The Westerners have no clue about the Chinese language and Chinese search, and how they do a lot of testing about Google's translated Chinese service is not nearly as intelligent as the Baidu customized Chinese culture and Chinese language search. But then you ask, and when we interviewed the CEO, we said, Robin, so what is your goal? What is your vision of the company? Fortune 500 global company. Huh? Chinese DNA, how can you be global? So this is something interesting. We said, then what about it? He said, well, actually, so this is really something interesting. I'll show you another example with Mindray. Baidu doesn't have it here. I don't think it has a very explicit knowledge, but they are trying to stretch something, which is we call it intangible DNA versus tangible DNA. Via the Chinese user friendliness, understanding Chinese market gives them a very speedy and efficient responsiveness to the consumer need, which allow them to revise, modify, customize all their products. So compared to Google, and they're mocking at Google and saying, these are the kids with toys. I'll show you these kids with toys on Google campus, having fun. They have no clue. They don't care about what users want. But Baidu, for every service we provide, we're going to do testing millions of times to make sure it's impeccable. Then we launch it, and this whole user friendliness, this marketing driven, is 10 times more than Google. Because of that, they're very aggressive going internationally, and this is from Thailand. Baidu provided a new software called Baidu PC Faster, and the software has more than 1 million times within 4 months, and they're very aggressive with neighboring countries, and they're going to go to Brazil. with the whole idea of the Baidu. We know Baidu, Baidu 知道. So we're talking about you think people remarking and say, aha, in those markets, Google is already the king. There's no way they can really endanger the status of Google. But double think. I'll show you stories later. This strategy, we call it the village to the city. It's like a Chairman Mao, how we win the aggressors with the automated gun, with all these power machinery, is via hand, with intelligence, and with using some food to do the manual gun, and you can win it. But it's not the point of winning. The point is, I go to the places that is so adverse that my enemies do not even look. But when I go there, it actually challenges my system, makes me actually enabled to deal with the system from two fronts. One is home, another is neighboring or adverse environment, but that's international, and allows me to stretch my muscle to deal with adversity and also train myself so that I have international, global capabilities. On the other hand, the world is a turning wheel, and these emerging markets, such as Vietnam, there is another story of TCL, the Chinese #1 TV screen provider, going to Vietnam. If you go to Vietnam, you ask them to name the 3 most luxurious luxury brand in the plasma category. One of them would be Panasonic and Sony, but one of them would be TCL, because TCL, even in the 80s, go there and devoted themselves to that market, and then the market of Africa. So now used to be what are the hot planet is called a BRIC. Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now it's a frick. So it's Africa. So even Africa, because it was bottom, right? So when people have money, the growth is tremendous, and all the multinational corporations are flooding to these places. So the 2 reasons of this company, so today, and let's watch it, and then just witness history. This is only 2012. They go to Brazil, but give them 15 years or 10 years, 5 years, and see how they can grab a very interesting foothold in those emerging market. And it's like to play the black and white checker game. Don't underestimate when your enemy has a little corner that is occupied. That corner can largely later encroach and threaten a big spot of your game. This is the same thing, the strategy we call the value village to city. And there are 2 reasons this strategy works now for 2 reasons. That village is growing. So if you made very little money in the past, now you have a fat return because village is growing. The emerging market is growing tremendously. City is shrinking. The whole developed world, the economic bubble, and all the failing economy, and actually people are not that going for the luxury anymore. We call it a new rising of the value segment. So Barack Obama's campaign, you can see that I want to save the middle class, because middle class cannot afford the things they used to be able to. So huge segment becoming the value segment. So you have this demand not only from the city will start buying you because you provide value. The village people can pay more for the upgraded products and services. So finally, the turn is theirs. And that's hugely explain why these companies, from Western perspective, have no strategy, no long-term view, but can succeed. Is because they're risking and they're gambling on emerging market, not because they love these emerging market, because they have no legitimacy in developed market, but it's actually being paid off right now. So TCL, we did an interview with a former CFO. He said, TCL bought, because all these companies want to go overseas, they don't have legitimacy, they would buy existing brand. When you buy existing brand, you're married to a partner that you have no clue about their culture. So the cultural conflict, the culture merge and integration is really the killer. And that's why, and not to say that because when the Chinese company trying to buy the overseas brands, it's always a media big story. So media are very bad because the hype of it make all these gigs acquisition they try to do overpriced. So everybody from China, especially we look at the TCL, Thomson, we look at IBM, everybody's overpaying at least 50%. That's all the evilness of Morgan Stanley. That we'll go back to that maybe someday. But we're talking about actually cannot it's very hard to sustain. So TCL was saying that they got almost killed. The whole section of the multimedia unit, the whole business is almost killed because of the acquisition of Thomson from France. But what really saved TCL is Vietnam and Thailand, East Asia market. Without the revenue and fat revenue flowing back to the headquarters, they would not be able to survive. So this is something I think is quite tremendous. I won't have time to talk about TCL, but I'm just trying to glue everything together. I'm quite a talker. If I don't stop, you never get to talk to me. I will share one story and then conclude because I guess this is more conversational. And I said the challenge is you try to condense almost 10 years of your thinking and 5 years of your work into 90 minutes. It's impossible. So I told myself, relax and just do not expect this can happen. So we will turn it more conversational. And this is one example of Baidu. I want to show, so this is very young guys, not even 40. He's #1 hot guy, recently divorced. And married a young, so all these beautiful young girls are hunting for a rich husband. So he is one of the recent victims, dumped the family. So it's a very sad story, actually. Good for someone. I give you this story, and I will stop, is talking about brand extension. BYD is another company from China, and the whole town in Guangdong province, we call it BYD city. And they said once you're a BYDer, you are forever BYD because you're going to work for BYD, you're going to marry someone from BYD, you're going to have a kid who study in the BYD school, you go to a hospital with BYD sponsored, and you go to in the shops and everyone, the houses BYD provide is a BYD village, is a BYD city. So that's why BYD always say made by BYD because they make everything, right? So it's a very collectivistic kind of power. This story is tremendous. We're talking about, and again, look at BYD, 17 years old. I mean, when you think about it, the brand, that I told my student, I said, always make analogies between brand and the people. I'm not saying if you have people who are older than me, don't be offended, but I'm very fearful of getting old because, I look at, scam, always targeted old people as if they are not thinking, We're talking about when we're old, losing all the muscles and the beauty of this, and we feel very threatened. And so I said to my student, yes, as a human, in human world, being old is very scary, but you know what, in brand world, being old is sexy. That is something you cannot buy. Be in that luxury, the watch, the luxury car, and you look at how old are they? At least 50 years old. Only after 50 years you start feeling the hotness in you, that everybody lasts after you. And I would love to be a brand than a person. So you look at these categories, they're all very young, right? So BYD, given its status. So we talk about BYD, I want to focus on the brand extension part. BYD is having 3 business units. They actually started as a battery maker. And their battery maker is, I think they're the #1 in the whole world. Doesn't matter what phone you're using. The likelihood that the battery, the chip, and the ingredients are all from BYD, this is highly possible. It's a really #1 right now. And also they have an IT company, which is really about all the accessories from computers. So when we visit the factory, the company in Guangdong, you can see that all the components, even not Apple is from Foxconn, but Nokia, all this laptop and every hardware, everything except software and assembly, everything's from BYD. But the most interesting part about BYD, it was doing really well. It was not famous. Suddenly, the whole world knew about BYD. It's because of the BYD car. And why the world knew about BYD is because of Warren Buffett. Because Warren Buffett bought a lot of stocks and trying to champion for this company. And it is that decision of going to auto that actually, I hope it's not a suicidal move, but it's not a flattering move. It really have a huge setback. And I will review this just very quickly, talking about the rationale. Why, as a battery maker, you would do car? When we look at a brand extension in Western literature, This is, we call it no sense strategy. What about you're making battery can make you make car? Who are the dominant players of the car? The Germans, the luxury, the people who have been in the industry for years. How can you just jump in and you think you can win? What are you thinking? Right? So this is an enigma to a lot of people. Later, here is a rumor. People are saying, I get it. People are saying it. One BYD car is doing really, really well. I'll tell you why they're doing really well. But when it's doing really well, the company CEO called Mr. Wang Chuanfu, they said, oh, Mr. Wang, you are a genius. I get it. Okay? So you are doing battery, right? So you're doing really, really well. And you envision one day, everybody need a battery, and the oil and the gas and the traditional car is going to be out of fashion. So what you really want to do is electric vehicle, because one of the hardcore technology of electric vehicle is a battery. The safetiness, the uniqueness of the battery, the sustain, all this functionality of the car. So that's why in order to do electric vehicle, you would do traditional vehicle. You have to know how to do traditional vehicle. That makes all sense. Right? So I'll tell you the real story, but this is real. And the guy said, yeah, so yeah, I'm really that good. I can think about so ahead of time. But actually, talk about what truly makes them, you can see actually the auto is not doing well. Auto is actually, they make some money, but now this is something they're really having a huge trouble. So we talk about BYD's reason for being successful, which is the whole category's success is driven by, we call it cost innovation. Remember, the second word is very important, is innovation. It's not a simple, mechanistic, killing, throat cutting kind of cost cutting. It's about innovating because of cutting the cost. And that innovation gives them huge resilience because all these automated lines, making cars, making batteries, automated line will cost you at least $100 million. What they do, they anatomize into bits and pieces. Whatever they can use human labor, manual labor, they would replace it. So when the factory workers try 20,000 times, they do better than the machine. The mistake, the error rate is almost zero. So they're very good, and this is called reverse innovation. That's a huge Harvard professor write about it. It's a mysterious phenomena because nobody would think about, the machines cannot replace human, and actually human can do better than the machine. But anyway, so this is really BYD. The hidden DNA is they're very good at the cutting costs, but with innovation make their business model very powerful. But going back to the car, and this is funny, right? So is Toyota Corolla. Toyota Corolla, that's the biggest volume. So Wang Chuanfu said, let's rip it off. We do model called F3, just follow everything except Mr. Wang is very smart. He has a huge legal team. He said it's all open literature. So I only modify one part, and then I'm not legally liable. So he just modified these peripheral parts so that he's not in legal trouble. But the F3 is still the best-selling car. So you can say that, you can see later, he actually made a lot of points later. The company shares, and this is the F3 model. This is, you can see this is 2009. You can see that 1 month, it's selling 23,000 units. And that's why it's the only company in the whole world who made all the money out of one model of the car. It's not they don't try. I'll show you they try really hard to do something else. So what he said, you know what? We stood upon the shoulders of the giants. We integrate them into our own production and our product design. The process of making Toyota or F3 is new. We're not really replicating. We're innovating, revising, modifying. We make it our own. Nothing wrong with it. And also, anyways, for any new products, 60% of it was based on findings from open literature. 30% from existing products, 5% from raw materials and ingredients, only 5% were from one's own research and development. So this is one of the success. Google was so furious because Baidu so great at just copying what the Google business model. You're selling AdWords, AdSense, you're selling advertising. I'm doing the same. So I'm just We call it modified imitation, speedy imitation. So this is really Montreal, but this gets him into trouble. I'll show you immediately why it gets him into trouble, and I'll conclude. So his cost innovation is about a few things. Not only modification, but also the great thing about it, quality is not compromised. So all his battery, very expensive ingredient, he can replace with existing accessible ingredient in China. His huge R&D team will make it work, and without compromising the quality. And this is amazing. Value, price without the quality compromise, that's a very powerful formula. And also they can reconfigure the product process so that when you have a new product, instead of I replace with a whole new automated line will cost me $200 million, I'm just replacing 3 sections, right? So from the whole model become modular, I'm so fast and reflexive and responsive and also reflexible. And that's really the beauty. But here's the trouble. He's very confident he can do everything. So this is unheard of, right? Within 2 years, he launched 10 models. Okay? He doesn't know. And his distribution, why he's doing that? Because Warren Buffett made him really famous. He announced to the whole world he wants to make this much money, to make investors return so much. He is stretching his system unbearable, including himself. So not only they try to flood the market with the new products. This is amazing. They can. Think about this is a 17-year-old company whose own R&D team can churn out all these models by themselves. This is vertically integrated and not counting on anyone else. They learn or imitate or a little bit steal, but they still can do it. But the problem is they're stretching the system really high. And in the end, and later, they launched, this is a big deal, their F3DM called a dual mode, so that the car can drive with gas, and you can charge it in your house, and you can do dual model. So this is really number one. And the problem, this company, I really felt very bad for them. They're just too impatient. They want to make the Note big so badly that they announced to the whole world about the F3DM from BYD, which is a world number 1 back in 2009. Everybody was scared. BYD, the BMW and electric GE and GM and all these people, they're thinking, how can this be? We're making cars for thousands of years, and this Chinese 17-year-old can do an electric car ahead of us. This is just unacceptable. Once they release this news, the problem is they don't have the software to implement it. So their car having huge trouble getting to the North American market in safety testing, whatever, while at the same time during the past 3 years, hybrid cars, electric cars everywhere, because it's not that difficult. So they're sending a wrong signal, too quick the signal to the competitors. So in the end, what happened is it's a management issue. Tanked in the end. So you look at 2011, the stock is horrible. Warren Buffett fired all the people who got him into the deal of BYD. I bet this guy is not going to be that proud when you see him now. But still, this is 2012 data. My student just got it for me that you can still see the BYD F3, the copycat of Toyota Corolla, and it's still top 10 because it's just half the price. It gives you everything that the Corolla is doing. If I were a consumer, I would buy it too. Who loves Chinese brand with great value and quality? The knowledgeable consumers who don't give a damn. Branding professors do not care about branding. We know the secrecy, We spend a lot of money in the intangible stuff. So actually still doing really well. Anyways, so this is the stock. So I said it's a brand extension. Now I tell you the true story. The true story that goes to the car is because that's a time of the Chinese government promoting the domestic auto industry. Whoever is joining the car industry will get a huge subsidy. Has nothing to do with a long-term vision. It's just because, and once that subsidy policy is withdrawn, because you cannot go on forever, they don't have an endless deep pocket, they have to stop it, and then you suffer. So partly it's also that as well. I want to conclude because this can go on forever. And this is Montreal, and this is the guy, and this guy doesn't come to Shenzhen anymore, right? So it's interesting. I love these stories. So what I'll show you at the very end, this is Mindray, another company, is actually the conclusion. This is another story about Ebor, another time. So I said that I'm not good of time. Another time, talking about Chinese luxury, the watch category is at Illusion, and also met a great guy, Mr. Tao Li. Anyways, so I want to conclude here is why do we care? I think the world brand is actually categorized into this camp. It's a developed world, the top 100 global brands coming from developed world. And you have the emerging market, such as these are the Tata, HTC from Taiwan, all higher from China. In the past, you live here, I live here. You cater to your market in your geography. I'm doing my world thing. I'm the premium, I'm the high end. We're not really dialoguing. We're not really competing. We're not bothering each other that much until that, where's my, I think they're losing the, okay, so something is, yes. Until that these guys have the ambition and the knowledge and power to come here. And that makes them on the same platform, and that's why I make these guys worry. So this is really why these Western executives are really now watching for these moves, because it is very, it's very sudden. By the way, just within 10 or a decade it's happening, so that's why it's very crazy. So Western perspective, and this is the 100 top brands from Interbrand. I always do this exercise with my students, and how many of them are from emerging market, from Asia? Maybe just one, which is HTC from Taiwan. So it's not their era yet. This is really, but what is the characteristics of the brands from the Western world is actually their system. They're very good at building a system, which is not only they have an internal culture, they have a system to synergize, integrate the dialoguing, just like the brain is dialoguing with your heart and your arm is listening. Everybody's integrated. They have a system. They have a very strong DNA and the value to guide their system. And they have a great thing about age, the heritage, experience, legitimacy. And all this, this is my other book about the brand system theory, is they're very triangle is the most sturdy structure if it's well aligned. So every piece, the external, the internal, the culture, the R&D, the strategy, the value, they're all synchronized. Not only that, they can change related to the environment, and then they can change with regard to time. So this is really why they're so sustainable. This is their system. So there's another way to show it is that you have the proven success or promise, you have this identity. So these pieces are very well, it's a flowing system. Think about the human body. You need the blood to flow inside your body. If you have something that is stuck, is not flowing, it's not sustainable. So that's a beauty from the perspective of system and the structure. These are the conclusion we draw from the top brands of the world, and the conclusion is, yes, they have a synchronized structure. However, and Steve Jobs, an example, we use a lot of example. It's an innovation in terms of turning engineers and electronics into designer, into fashion, right? Into the design is the most important part. The Google, we talk about the kids and talk about this, is really about the yes culture to its innovation. So when you go back, each one have its unique culture, and that unique system is infiltrating into every aspect of their brand being. And that's why, it's an innovation is Google's DNA. So they have 60 some, products every year. So now, going back to the Chinese brand. These are the DNAs I think are very important, yes? 10 minutes. Okay, so this is the last piece. Okay, last piece is, it's their DNA that I discussed a lot about it. But there's only two things here, and I think it's ambition and passion. So today's Chinese companies are today's Americans. We're very similar when you dialogue with them. But this system is great in many ways, but the problem is, structurally, it's not integrated. So this is really visually, how do I manifest our finding? It's fragmented in many, many ways, and then one piece is not, so it's very reactive. We talk about this. And also, it's very reactive. So it's like, so the beautiful triangle will look like very lopsided in many ways. So this is the conclusion. And one last question is, this is a little pad from Lenovo, which is competing with iPad. How much are you willing to pay? My student told me that they immediately think about Walmart. They want to pay $40. And I said, Lenovo CEO will come and just slap you on your face because it's a similar price with iPad in China. So my point is about, and it's very innovative casing, so it makes it look like laptop, and so you have all the keyboards. A lot of great innovation with that company. I love that company, but a lot of problems as well. But I think the final conclusion is the brand world is all about, it's a trademark and going to trust mark, going to love mark. I think a lot of these this journey is already completed within the domestic market. The trouble of these markets are that they don't have legitimacy worldwide, and therefore all these brands are trying to climb up to this identity, love mark, and trust mark in the developed market. And that's really the climbing that they're doing that is so difficult. And my final conclusion is that a dream? We have the guy, Yu Gong Yi Shan, someone can move a mountain. So climbing a mountain is no big deal. It's just a dream. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of effort. Or you're trying to reach the sky with a ladder. It's an illusion. And I will leave that to many people to share their view. And I am so sorry that I just occupy all my time with my talking. I would love to respond to questions and hear your input. I will be here. My flight is tomorrow, so I can talk to you. If you have time, we can discuss, okay? Sorry. I cannot say industrial, but I do have a similar kind of case in mind that eventually when we talk about design, we're talking about concept. So what kind of concept are we playing to manifest it in a very exterior way? And I think the era of imitation it was very dominant, but now it's an era of regression. So there was many times that we register our brand with a foreign name. We would imitate a copy IKEA. So you go to all the furniture store, and it looks like, you don't know whether it's a Chinese company or a foreign company. You cannot distinguish it's a Swedish design or locally designed. It doesn't matter because it's all like a F3 copying Corolla, so it doesn't matter. But now, I think the richness, the awareness, and the sense of art, the sense of identity is finally triggered. People looking for the old icons back to many years ago. For example, 1920s of Shanghai, even going back to the Qing, the traditional. So giving an example of Shanghai Jiahua has this whole idea of the new revival of the cream, and they released in Geneva, and the design is it's 1920s Shanghai. And so they recycle with a nostalgic kind of revisit of the culture and the old cultural kind of concept, because I think that makes a lot of sense. If you ask me, I said, bingo, that's the right way to go, because that's the only piece that can glue the consumer together. Not only that, who said the Chinese-ness is all bad? There are a lot of great herbs, science and herbal medicine. It's a miracle. So there are a lot of local indigenous concept should be communicated with global language. And that's what we're lacking. We don't have the global language and global communication template. Yet our concept, indigenous concept, is as beautiful as anyone's. You just need to be secure and confident enough to embracing it and modernize it. And that's really what I think should be the solution. Yes?
I'm just a small OEM factory in China in the electronic field. We do many infrared sensor and smaller electronic consumer items. Just now you talk about many big names things, but I think more than 90% of us are in smaller items. So especially in this economic downtime, we are struggling changing mindset. And currency exchange, material costs, everything are very unfavorable to us. I wish to know if you can give us some advice enlightening us how can we, what can we do further, because we do not have that many resources to develop our plan.
I thought about that actually. There is a reason we pick the number ones in each category, simply because we have to have legitimacy to show the world that these stories are worth telling. If I show the smaller companies, and people would say, yeah, that's not worth telling, but the existence is equally important. I live in Winnipeg, which is a hub of small business, and Winnipeg is never a crazy booming market. It's always tough, and that's why IKEA is going to Winnipeg scare the hell of a lot of people, not just furniture store. So the EQ3 is one of the company. And my sense is there are two things I want to discuss is in China, when you talk about the drug effect, jumping the policy train, there is a blindness following. There is a blind following that is there. And the blind following means a lot of reputation. Because everybody's jumping the train, it's like a herding effect. You're just following it. You don't even think about it. And I think a lot of business, big or small, the motivation, the trigger is that following. It's not sustainable anyways, because one day the demand will be shorter than the supply, because we're oversupplying. If you're in that line of business, I do think restructuring and changing another business is a great idea, because that's not just the demand-driven kind of business, not sustainable. But there is another kind of company, like a lot of Winnipeg companies and Western companies, doesn't matter big or small. They ask the first question is, what is my differentiation? What am I offering that other people are not offering? And this is very important, is what am I doing other people are not doing? This is a hard question, trust me. This is called critical thinking. In my class, graduate level, PhD level, I asked them to tell me, spend 10 weeks writing a paper. The first 2 paragraphs is, what about your idea that is new, that is different from others' research? Is very hard question, but that's the drill you have to go through. Is before you even have that, you have to think about the uniqueness, the differentiation. That's number 2. Number 3, cluster. It's network approach. And I know in Jinjiang, Fujian, there are a lot of companies, they have a vertically integrated value chain. Like you have everybody workshop, but they work in cluster. So that if you're not by yourself, you have a network. You have to find that network. Either you complement each other, or you can be a supplier of a bigger guy. You have to find an ecosystem that you're adding value. And I think collaborative approach is actually one thing that I see a lot is happening. I don't own a business. I can see you is my observation of these companies and their strategies. As to the execution, that's why the business owners are always my teacher. And I forever feel indebted that I can learn. We can discuss further in terms of tactics, in terms of the specific strategy, but that's how I envision it. I think the Chinese firms do not have the habit of thinking how to differentiate. That's not their fault, because our culture is collectivistic, interdependent culture. We're very much other-driven. We're taking a lot of signals from others, from our system, instead of asking ourselves. But in order to join the global world market, we have to reshuffle our card and kind of engineer ourselves, which is not easy. Everybody wants to be doing things that is easy to them. Unfortunately, if this is a game we play, we have just to restructure. Okay.
Can I ask a trivial question? Does BYD stand for something specific?
Used to be nothing. Used to be nothing. BYD just BYD. They have a random some name. But the illusion of branding for all the Chinese CEOs are you're wearing a mini skirt, dress beautifully, say beautiful things. So they made it build your dream.
I found the Chinese characters for it, Biyadi.
Yeah. Well, BYD, the translation is trying to deliver a foreignness. BYD is like a pronunciation translation of foreign name, so that it doesn't have any linguistic meaning. It just sounds foreign, and I think that was an early strategy. And that's why you don't blame them. They're only 20, 15. When you were 16, do you know who you are? I mean, I'm even 38, I don't know who I am, so I think it's only natural, and they're doing risky stuff because they're just wondering, they're reshaping. I'm just amazed by the sheer sense of passion. One thing I did talk about is all these CEOs, all of them are saying one thing: it's our turn. It's my mission. It's my personal mission to make the Chinese brand be global, to show the world. The sense of responsibility is way beyond. These people are so rich, they have billions and billions. It's not even an issue. I think that's the collectivistic mission that is quite amazing, actually. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, we have a small token of thanks.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful presentation.
And thank
Professor
you
Wan.
again for